Hello again, wine lovers and friends. Welcome to our channel Uncorked. My name is Roland Zimmerman. I'm here today to talk to you about Canadian ice wine, specifically Niagara Icewines. So sit tight, grab a glass, and we'll get right to it. So in today's video, I'd like to address and answer some of the questions we've recently received about ice wines. And some of them are as simple as, how long will a bottle of open ice wine last? And if there's anything else you can do with that open bottle. How is ice wine best served? With what is it best served? Is there a special glass? Are there different types of ice wine? Finally, why is gewürztraminer less common than other ice wines? And of course, the crowning question of them all, why is it so expensive? We'll get to that all in good time. First of all, I do need to kind of address a little bit about ice wine for those of you that are not familiar with what it is. Ice wine is wine made from grapes that are naturally frozen on the vine. Here in Ontario, we actually have very strict quality control regulations that the temperature must be below -8 degrees and that we must notify the authorities when we are actually going out to pick so that they can come and inspect that we are actually indeed picking. They know this because of GPS location of our vineyards, but also they actually physically come out to the site at times to check the temperature to ensure that we are picking at the right time. But that's only the first part. That's in the vineyard. Secondly, in the actual winery itself, they also check whether or not the sugar readings are meeting the minimum standard quality for ice wine production. Again, in Ontario, the minimum Brix level, which is a measurement of sugar, is 32 Brix in order to be called an ice wine. So that's a quick synopsis. More details can be found on previous videos. To the questions. How long will an open bottle of ice wine last for? And are there other uses for it? Of course. An ice wine bottle will last typically about the range of about a white wine, so about 7 to 6 days in the fridge, provided you put a stopper in the top of it and you keep it sealed with the appropriate vacuum pump. We've talked about this in wine preservation previously. Please look up that video and that will explain the how-tos of what to do there. Now, other uses for ice wine, other than just drinking it, include things like mixing it in cocktails. We plan on doing a video about this very shortly, and maybe you'll join us for that particular one. I'm looking forward to it. And also other uses for ice wine, you can cook with it. There are certain dishes that you can add it to. A personal family favorite is adding it to like a compote when you're making a little bit of a berry stew for your cheeses to spread on top, especially over Christmas. It is a family favorite over ice cream. There is a big following in our fan club of Icewine, Riesling Icewine over top of vanilla ice cream. It is to die for. Heavenly, with a few peaches, of course. Sorry, couldn't help plug the peaches. Anyways, continuing on, how is ice wine best served? Well, it's actually best served when it's chilled at about fridge temperature, so about 4 to 6 degrees Celsius is ideal. It's also best served either on its own as a dessert because it is such an intense experience that it really does bring its own music to its party. It is a phenomenal dessert treat, but if you feel like you need to pair it with something, there's a rule of thumb. You can pair some fruits with it that are a little bit on the sweeter side, or you can pair it with, if you want just the flavor, something to neutralize the flavors in your palate, something like crackers, very, very specific, very sharp cheeses such as a Stilton pairs exceptionally well with a Riesling. Is there a special glass? This is actually one of the top questions we get in our retail store is, do we have special stemware for it? And yes, of course we do. One sec. You can see here, this is the King's Court Icewine glass. We've actually found over years of trying and erroring numerous times with these particular, with various different pieces of stemware, trying to find the best Icewine suited glass. And what we are looking for is something that will really allow the consumer to get the full range of flavors come out of the Icewine with absolute minimum effort. And this glass has actually served that purpose extremely well. So these are available if you'd like. Continuing on, what types of Icewine are there? Well, worldwide, there are numerous different varieties that are used for Icewine. There are, however, sort of the top 4 that are most common for production. They are Vidal, Cabernet Franc, Riesling, and gewürztraminer. You can, of course, as a winery, produce Icewine from just about any grape variety you wish. There are, of course, a lot of hurdles with it, specifically the thickness of the skin, the ripeness of the grapes, the time of picking. It does get a little more complicated with certain varietals. However, it is indeed possible. It's just a question of whether or not the Icewine tastes that good. Over trial and error in Ontario, we've discovered that those 4 varieties I mentioned are absolute year after year or year in and year out consistent producers as specific Icewines, and they produce the best results possible. So this brings me to another question that lies very close to my heart, and that is, why is gewürztraminer Icewine less common? Well, the truth be told, here in Niagara, our climate is suited to growing gewürztraminer as a variety. You do find it in various store shelves, and we do have a limited production ourselves of gewürztraminer available. However, gewürztraminer as a variety does have a bit of a thinner skin. Now, I did mention this just a few seconds ago, that the thickness of the skin has a very strong influence on whether or not the variety is well suited to the freezing and the thawing cycle. Basically, you're expanding and contracting the outside of the berry. And at some point, those berries, it's like a balloon. It can only take so much. It's just going to burst, and then you lose all the juice out of the berry. And this is a common problem with gewürztraminer. Another factor with gewürztraminer is that in our climate, because of our intense summers, it tends to ripen very, very quickly, so that by the time you wish to, or you actually opt to try to make a gewürztraminer out of it, or a gewürztraminer Icewine out of your gewürztraminer vines, you may have needed to make that decision in January or February when you were actually doing the pruning. So it's very difficult and very time committed in terms of what is required of the winery and the vineyard producer to make an absolutely phenomenal gewürztraminer Icewine, which I am a little bit humbled to say we have definitely achieved. So the final question, and this is definitely the one that 9 times out of 10 we hear, is why is it so expensive? Well, it actually comes down to simple math. You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that a bunch of berries normally produces about a glass and a half of finished wine as a dry wine. Now, the bunch of berries produces about a teaspoon of Icewine. So you kind of put that volume in comparison, and you can kind of start understanding that you need 10 times the amount of berries to produce the same volume of liquid as a dry wine from an Icewine. So it does add up very quickly. In addition, there are years where we've experienced it ourselves, where you're sitting on the edge of your seat waiting for the temperature to get down to -8 so you can get out there and pick. And then as soon as you get out into the field, oh, temperature went up. Sorry, you can't legally pick it as Icewine. Shucks. Well, you've just spent all that time and all that money getting equipment, people, and everything out there, and it didn't happen. That's part farming, but that's part of the production of Icewine, and that's another reason why it gets so expensive. And then finally, Icewine tends to be very, very finicky when it comes to the fermentation. It does not ferment quickly. Normally, fermentation can take place, complete fermentation can take place in about 10 to 12, maybe even 14 days. Icewines, because of their high sugar content, can take up to 90 days We've experienced it. It has been painstaking, and you are babying this wine. You are checking on it every day. You might even be checking on it twice a day because you have invested so much effort and so much time and so much money into this particular product that you just can't fail. It's not possible because the financial consequences are enormous. And that's part of the reason why not every winery produces ice wine year in and year out, because truthfully, sometimes the weather doesn't play along and sometimes the market isn't there. And yes, ice wines are expensive for that reason. They are a luxury product. They are fairly rare in terms of wine production in the whole world. Canada is one of the top producers of ice wine worldwide, and for that reason we are also the ones that can help set the price, because it is a lot of work, but the rewards are very much well worth it. If you've never tried a glass of ice wine, I highly recommend you come and visit us. We would be more than happy to have you try it. We have 4 different wines available for tasting. We welcome you at any point in time. That's it for today, my dear wine friends. Please drop us a like, subscribe. Thank you very much for listening today. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.